The Chicago Bears are not favorites to make it to the Super Bowl, but they're my favorite dark horse, and I'll explain why on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso, with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the brain, Luke Braun. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Super Bowl dark horses in the NFL. We'll talk about some of the long shots, some of the mid-range dark horses. We'll talk about some of the top dark horses that aren't necessarily favorites to make it, which we believe in which that we simply don't. Now, before we get into all of that, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Luke, here's how we want to do it. On today's show, we're going to be looking at dark horses to make the Super Bowl, and what I have done is I have eliminated the top 9 options on FanDuel Sportsbook. There are 4 in the NFC. There are 5 in the AFC, whose odds are just far and away better to reach the Super Bowl, not win, but to reach the Super Bowl than everyone else. So we're going to look at the teams that come next, starting at the Kansas City Chiefs, who are plus 920 right now. Now, obviously, this is the Kansas City Chiefs. Going to be hard to count them out, but they're looking like they're in a tough spot right now, Luke. And as I heard yesterday from Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs, the Chiefs are basically in a must-win situation the rest of the year. That makes them, I guess, tougher to buy for me than like the Chicago Bears, who are next in the odds, who sit at plus 1120, along with the Texans and the Lions. I think the Bears, who are #1 in their conference right now, even if they don't inspire as much confidence as a Chiefs team, the Bears absolutely have a better chance just based on the fact that they have a better chance to not only make the playoffs, but have a high seed.
I have trouble trusting the Bears because I still have trouble trusting Caleb Williams. Right now, out of all 31 quarterbacks who have played at least 250 plays or 250 dropbacks, Caleb Williams has the worst completion percentage over expectation. 31 out of 31, below names like Justin Fields, Bryce Young, Joe Flacco, Geno Smith. And if you want to add their passing EPA into it, because sometimes good plays can happen even on short passes, and Ben Johnson's done a great job scheming, they're still the 6th worst passing offense by a composite of those two stats. And look, the Bears, we saw how they can take it to a really good team in their building, which, unless they hang on to the North, that's what they'll have to do. I think they've got a decent enough shot to do it. They've got the cards are on the table for them to do it, right? They just have to go sweep the Packers. But if they don't do that, they end up in the wild card. They have to go on the road. The formula is in front of us where it's play great defense, run the ball. And they ran the ball like absolute crazy, right? But this team cannot come down to, does Caleb Williams do this for us? I just don't trust that. They need to be a defense, run game, grind you out, suffocate. If they can replicate that formula we saw on Black Friday, yeah, they can take it to good teams like the Eagles. But I don't see them winning games like they won against the Bengals nearly as sustainably, where it's this 45-46, shootout kind of thing. Yeah. And there's just a consistency angle. I think we're going to learn a lot about the Bears. They have 3 really important games coming up, 2 against the Packers, 1 against the Lions. That's going to decide the NFC North. The NFC North will be decided in those 3 games. And if they end up having to go on the road and play a team like the Rams or whichever team does win the NFC North, man, that's a tall order. And I can't really get out of my head what the Lions did to them week 2. And I really need to see them get their revenge and show that they can consistently compete with that upper echelon, not just catch the Eagles on a bad day, which they seem to be having more of.
Well, I'm with you there that we have not seen consistency from the Bears. It's hard to trust the Bears because it's year one of Ben Johnson. It's year two of Caleb Williams. Colston Loveland's making plays. A lot of these guys, we have no reason to trust them to do things. But right now, we have to admit, things are coming together for the Bears, something my guy Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears talked about.
As well. So it just feels like, boy, this was the kind of everything comes together performance from the Bears offense that we've been looking for, and then the defense more than did its part in a way that was even also a little bit unexpected given the injuries and everything they had to overcome on that side of the ball against a really solid quarterback in Jalen Hurts, maybe the best quarterback the Bears have seen since on this winning stretch, but also getting turnovers off of him.
Listen, my point here about the Bears is not that I think the Bears are going to the Super Bowl. I think they should be favorites. But out of this group, Chiefs and Texans, who aren't even technically in the playoffs, Lions, who aren't even technically in the playoffs right now, while the Bears have the number one seed right now. And if you have to play in Chicago with their run game, their defense has been forcing turnovers. That run game, a defense that forces a lot of turnovers, even if they're a bend-don't-break defense. Caleb Williams' playmaking ability to get you out of bad spots when maybe the play doesn't work and he can just make something happen. While it's inconsistent, it's still there. I think all of those factors together make them my favorite pick out of this group. Now, you're right. They're going to have to get some revenge on the Lions, and the Lions might be the other team in here that you look at and say maybe they can turn things around because the NFC North is still up for grabs, and now they're going to be getting Kirby Joseph back. And that's obviously a big addition to the lineup, like my guy Matt Derry from Locked On Lions talks about.
Kirby Joseph, knee brace and all, was back on the field today at practice for the Lions. Dave Burkett of the Free Press tweeted out a couple of hours ago that he looked pretty good. That there were times he moved around well. After practice in the locker room, Joseph shot down rumors and reports that are out there on social media that he could need surgery and that maybe his career was over.
Yeah, I actually saw that early on Tuesday, that there was some concern. And now, not only is his career not over, he's coming back to play this week. And Joseph makes a big difference in the back end of that defense. But I got to tell you, again, out of these four teams in this group, the Chiefs, the Texans, the Bears, the Lions, I think the Bears clearly have the easiest path. And quite frankly, I trust the Bears as a football team right now more than I trust the Lions.
They're certainly in the best position, sitting at 9-3,
Yes.
1 seed, leading their division and all of that. I can't stop looking at the Texans. If you want to see a team that can go on the road and win with defense, Texans defense is currently, by EPA per play, number one in the league. Not two, not three, number one in the league. They
first in yards, first in points. I mean, they're first across the board.
Yeah, and I think a week or two ago, I talked about the Ravens as this team that, was in a rough spot standing wise, but they figured it out and they kind of got hot and they figured out who they need to be. And I feel like the Texans are in the same spot, and don't look now, but they're one game behind the Colts and Jaguars in the division. That is just as up for grabs as the NFC North is. And similarly, they get the chance to go win important games in that division, take it back. And they just did that. So I think that the Texans are kind of coming on strong right at just the right time. And in the AFC, if it's not this year, it's never this year. The Chiefs at 6-6 are almost certainly going to have to be road warriors. And you might have to host the Chiefs if you end up winning the AFC South. But you get to host them. They get to be this is not the year where it's going to be Chiefs and Bills in the AFC Championship. Everybody pencil it in and let's all just fall asleep until January 31st or whatever. Right. This is the year where you can be a Texans or a Colts or a
Patriots.
Somebody who's never been, who doesn't do it can go do it. And I think that I see the Texans and Bears as similar teams as these kind of defensive teams with, highly drafted quarterbacks. You're not getting what you need out of them, but you don't need a lot out of them now because the defense is playing well. And if I've got a team like that, I would much rather go into this AFC than this NFC.
I hear you there. Now, here's the thing. The Chiefs and the Texans is going to sort itself out because they play each other this week. And whoever wins that game is done. And whoever wins that game can continue their playoff hopes. And whoever loses, in my opinion, is absolutely done. So I think that
playoff game,
that's going to sort itself out a little bit as well this weekend. But with that being said, we got to go down a tier. There are some teams with longer odds in here who I think might have just as good of a shot as some of the teams that we just discussed, and maybe even a better shot when you talk about a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Oh, boy.
Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before you even gift it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. Grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anyone who loves photos will love this gift. And you get an endless upload of pictures and 30-second videos through the Aura app. Packaging comes gift ready, no price tag, no wrapping needed. It's a huge win for the holiday season. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's Aura, A-U-R-A frames.com, promo code LOCKEDON. This deal is exclusive to our listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Luke, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL, looking at some Super Bowl dark horses and who we believe in, who we don't believe in. We talk about the top rung of non-favorites. There's about 9 teams I would categorize as higher favorites, and then we get to that tier of teams that we just discussed with the Chiefs and the Bears and the Texans and the Lions. But now I want to go down a little bit to the Los Angeles Chargers, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the San Francisco 49ers, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And look, the Chargers and 49ers are at plus 1,200. But my favorite out of this group is actually the Jacksonville Jaguars, who currently sit on top of the AFC South, as my guy Tony Wiggins reminded us from Locked On Jaguars.
Well, your Jacksonville Jaguars are sitting at the top of this division. It's a real good spot for them to be in, especially since we're not used to them being here and being here with so much optimism. And then the good thing about it is they're still banged up. They're still getting people back from injury. The offensive line had to do some moving and shaking today. But they're right there at 8-4, man.
And they are a talented team. I believed in Jacksonville before the season. They are confirming my bias here. I had them winning the AFC South. They have clawed back despite a great start by the Colts, and now they get the opportunity to play the Colts directly and take a big lead in the, well, not a big lead, but take a commanding lead, I would say, in the AFC South with a win. They play the Colts twice the rest of the season, so they can dominate them and easily win this division. They just have a ton of talent, and what they've added at wide receiver throughout the year with a Tim Patrick, with a Jacoby Myers, like, they just have so much talent on that side of the ball. They run the ball well. They play good defense. They don't even have Travon Walker in the lineup right now. They play good defense. You know, they don't even have Travis Hunter, their top draft pick, who they traded up for. But this team has a lot of talent on defense. The defensive front, like with Houston, it can be a real nightmare. The offense is coming together, and I think that they can have a top seed. So unlike the 49ers, the Bucs, the Chargers, who I think have more uncertainty, I am more certain about the Jags being a talented team, and if things break right and they get some home games, I think there's a chance they could end up in the Super Bowl this year.
Again, in the AFC, like this, if like this is the year for you
Yes.
to be the Jaguars and to be the
Yes.
team that gets in. I've not been on this train with you. I just don't think that Trevor Lawrence is playing that way. So to me, I see the path to the Jags is this like road warrior defense team. You know, their defense is, we just talked about the Bears being carried by their defense. Jags defense is playing better. And it has been playing as one of the best defenses in the league for the last like 4 weeks. That's got to be what it is, because Trevor Lawrence is still, by completion percentage over expectation or EPA or whatever stat you want to, it has not been the, you know, they're getting dominant and rolling. This hasn't been, you know,
Right.
Sam Darnold going crazy on the Seahawks, kind of, you know, surge. For me, out of this group that you mentioned, I kind of like the Chargers. I do this every year, and it always burns me, and I'm just not ever going to learn my lesson about Justin Herbert and the Chargers. But if you want to talk about a defense, their defense has been going toe-to-toe with, Philly, LA, the Patriots. And I see teams, I put the Bucs in this a little bit too. When it gets to playoff time, there's always these surprise teams that are in it that we didn't expect to be in it. And then there's teams that are there every year. And those are the teams that always feel like they've got a little bit of a leg up in those first couple of rounds. And so, the Bucs that are in it every year, they win a game or maybe they don't. They've got a lot of playoff experience, and Justin Herbert has at least at least he's been there, and they had that disaster against the Chargers a few years ago. But I need to see a little bit more out of their offense before I fully go like gung ho. But they're also not entirely out of divisional contention. That's still in the cards, although unlikely. The Broncos are heavy favorites. But I see when I see a team that can kind of get explosive, I see a team that can go on the road and maybe pull a spicy upset, especially if they go on the road against like the Colts or Jaguars or teams that don't have a lot of playoff experience that might be hosting this game. And I think the same about the Patriots, who, in my opinion, are the best team in the AFC. But a lot of those guys don't have a lot of playoff experience, and they're probably going to be hosting somebody who does. That's the making of a playoff upset.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And honestly, the problem with the Chargers for me is the offensive line is not going to get better. They're injured. They're banged up. Guys it's not going to get better. And that's the fatal flaw. And in the AFC, where there are some pretty good defensive fronts, like a Houston or like a Jacksonville, I just think that is ultimately going to be the Chargers' undoing. So I honestly have them fourth out of this group of teams. The other team that I like is the Buccaneers, because they're a team, they just, they've been through the fire. They've won close games. They've been super banged up this year. They played really well early on, or not really well, but they were winning games early on. And then they've had kind of a midseason lull here where they've lost some games. They haven't played that well. But they're a team that can get healthy, get hot, and shake up anything in the NFC. And like I said, they're getting healthy. They got a very important piece back this week in Bucky Irving, as my guy James Yarko from Locked On Bucs talked about.
Game ball, Bucky Irving. 81 all-purpose yards on 19 touches and gets his first rushing touchdown of the season. But it was just great to see him out there. It was great to see him out there with the smile on his face, with the energy, with the excitement to be back with the team and playing the way that really he normally does. He didn't appear rusty. He didn't appear slower or, not in game shape or anything like that. He was a huge reason the Bucs won this game.
And he was a huge reason why they were making a run last year as well. I mean, that is the DNA of the Bucs, is all the offensive talent that they have. I know the defense has been super, super shaky as of late, but I just feel like they're a team that has been there before. They've played playoff games. They've gone on the road. They've done things. So they're not going to be caught off guard if they play, a team like the Bears. Think about that, a playoff matchup. Who would you trust more between the Bucs and the Bears if they played each other? The Bucs has simply been there more often. So I think the 49ers have a ton of injuries on the defensive side of the ball, and I think ultimately would get the best of them. And I trust Baker Mayfield more than I trust Brock Purdy, with both teams having pretty good weapons on offense. So I like the Bucs and the Jags, who are actually lesser in the odds than the Chargers or the 49ers on FanDuel.
Yeah, I have a deep trust for Baker Mayfield, especially late in the season. I think he's just earned that. Yep. He started earning that for me way back in 2020 when he won the Browns their only playoff win in however many years. And I find the FanDuel odds kind of interesting. So the Buccaneers are minus 550 to win the NFC South. Panthers are plus 450. They're the only two teams in contention. And the Bucs play the Panthers twice yet. Those two teams haven't played each other yet. And it's 7-5 and 7-6. Panthers are only half a game behind. That comes down to those games and how those games go down. And we'll talk more about the Panthers in a bit. But to me, that is a lot more wide open than those odds would imply. But it's just that FanDuel sees the Bucs as a much better team than the Panthers, which I definitely agree with. But yeah, if the Bucs can get that home wild card game, get a matchup against somebody who's good but flawed, like the Bears or Lions. And then they'll have the problem is they'll have to go on the road and beat somebody really good. Seahawks, Rams, Packers, whoever they end up getting, they're going to have to go on the road and beat somebody really great. And that's going to be a lot tougher. I kind of think it matters to them how the NFC North shakes out too.
Yes.
Because that might change which stadium they're headed to. But they've shown that they can play a C- game and win it. And I think that there's something to that. I think there's also something to, hey, those wins early weren't sustainable. It's fallen away a little bit. They've had some kind of blemishes on their season. And I think that's sort of, they've revealed who they really are, which is, I think, appropriately a 7-5 team.
Right.
But I think it's like a 7-5 team you don't want to see in January, especially if they're the team with more experience.
Yeah, and if they get hot here at the end of the year as they get healthier too, that'll really be what gives me some confidence that they could be a dark horse contender to get to the Super Bowl. But now we got to go down to, quite frankly, the last tier of teams I would feel comfortable even having a dark horse Super Bowl conversation about. And it's two teams in the NFC, the Dallas Cowboys and the Carolina Panthers. And one of them I think is real, and one of them I think is just fun. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL Sundays move fast, folks. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting on FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. They got live spreads, money lines adjust instantly, player props update as guys heat up. You can bet the next touchdown score, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked in to every snap, every drive, every possibility. So, if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com to place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, Luke, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL, looking at Super Bowl dark horse contenders, who we believe in, who we don't believe in. We talked about the top tier with the Chiefs, the Bears, the Texans, the Lions, the mid-tier with the Chargers, 49ers, Jaguars, and Bucks. Now we got to get into the bottom rung of teams that you could, I guess, consider a dark horse Super Bowl contender. They're right on the line of being out of the conversation and being in the conversation, and we have to start with the Carolina Panthers, who got a big-time win over the Los Angeles Rams this week. They're one game back in the NFC South. They have a chance to win. And like my guy Julian Council from Locked On Panthers said recently, this team can beat anybody or lose to anybody.
The Panthers got it done again on Sunday. I doubted them. Did not think they had any chance of winning that game on Sunday afternoon. And what do you know? 31-28 against the Los Angeles Rams, who were the top seed in the NFC. They can beat them. The Panthers can probably beat anybody in the NFL. Unfortunately, they also can lose to anybody based off of what we have seen so far this year.
And look, the Panthers are fun. They're a growing team. They're improving. I think they're 1 year away from really being in this conversation. So I think the Panthers are fun, but I don't think that they're good.
You need Bryce Young to grow more than he has grown. He has grown, undoubtedly. I am working on a big, long form on Bryce Young and his growth and kind of the training he came from and how some of that is holding him back and how he's like slowly but surely getting over those habits. To give you a teaser, so he comes from I'll call it the Phil Longo school of quarterback footwork. I think Jordan Love is the way too, where he doesn't turn his hips and his shoulders and then like cross over his feet and his drop back like you're used to seeing from most quarterbacks, right? He's a lot more square, and that causes him some problems because he doesn't have the flexibility and the ability to get his hips and his feet around the other way. If he needs to throw quickly to his right, that's where a lot of the worst things in his career have happened to him. And it mattered a lot to me actually in this Rams game, the touchdown to Jalen Coker that was exactly that. He got the snap, he turned to his right, and he threw a really nice ball right in the bucket down the field. Like that is extremely meaningful to me, but I need to see more of that. I need to see it happen week in and week out before I kind of trust that he can do it, because even the worst quarterbacks in the league can hit one here or there, right? So I would say that he has, I mean, he's gone from one of the worst QBs in the league to an average one. Yep. And you need a little more than that before I start talking about the Panthers as, oh, let's get in at the 7 seed and make some noise. But that's what really both of these teams are, is they're dark horse playoff participants, not dark horse Super Bowl participants. But hey, if the Panthers did that, if they did get in at the 7 seed, or shoot, if they, get hot, beat the Bucs a couple of times and take that 4th seed in a big upset and get to host a playoff game, it kind of doesn't matter to me if they win it. I feel like that's just a great step for Dave Canales and the Panthers. But for me to really buy into them as a true, a team we simply got to keep our eye on for the NFC winner, I need to see Bryce Young be a little bit more consistent mechanically. He'll still fall away from passes for no reason. He's a lot better at marrying his feet and his eyes, and he's not throwing off platform nearly as much as he did. He would just kind of like wing things off platform for no reason back in his rookie year. He's not doing that anymore. All that stuff matters. But he was so broken his rookie year. There's just more progress to be made. But I hope the Panthers stick with him and let him make that progress. In a world where we've seen guys have, year 6, year 7, become the guy they're supposed to be, I hope the Panthers stick by it and get to year 6 and year 7 with Bryce Young and see what that is. I think that's worth chasing for them.
I think he's earned at least 2 more years. You definitely let him get the last year of his rookie contract, and then I would, accept his option and see what happens in year 5 at minimum. Give him that,
Yeah,
but
no, I think he's 5th year option and all that. You get that. You take the team control that you have and you make a decision there. I think the Panthers have to be the Bryce Young team and see where that takes them in the long term. That when you pick a guy 1 overall, you got to do that. Unless it's Jamarcus Russell, you got to do that.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right about that. But I'll be honest with you, both of these teams are playoff dark horses. But I do believe if the Dallas Cowboys get into the playoffs, they are a Super Bowl contender. I believe that they have the talent on the offensive side of the ball with their offensive line, with the wide receiver talent they obviously have, and the changes that they made on defense. I really do think that the Cowboys have the talent to win a Super Bowl. It's just, can they get out of the hole that they dug themselves in early after, Jerry traded away the talent on defense before he made the correction to get some back?
When you have an offense playing like that, you're in every game, right?
Yes.
It's kind of a souped up version of what I was saying about the Chargers, where like, look, you're explosive. You can just hang 40 on anybody, and then you get somebody, one team that screws it up twice and punts, and then suddenly that's the difference, right? They're going to have to do the road warrior thing. It's really hard for me to do that like consistently with Dak, and there's something that like Dak Prescott, and particularly in the playoffs, has, some pretty infamous moments. But let me give you a journey here for the Cowboys. Let me paint a picture for you. Let's say they do get in as the 7th seed. Let's say, over in the NFC North, the Packers beat the Bears a couple times. They win the NFC North. They get the 2 seed. And the Cowboys go to Lambeau as the 7 seed and the 2 seed 2 years after that 2023 Jordan Love coming out party. Dak Prescott shows up. He puts one on him. Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. Things are getting a little testy there. If they lose in the wild card, or if they end up missing the playoffs and falling apart, that relationship isn't as good as you might think. Suddenly the Cowboys upset the Packers in a 7-2 seed matchup, get that entire monkey off their back, get a playoff win, and they take out Matt LaFleur in the process. And they go to the divisional round, probably going to like the Eagles or the Rams or something. They'll die in the divisional round, but by then the damage is done and Cowboys fans can be happy.
No, they did what they did. They got their revenge. Everything is right with the universe. Balance is found. You know what I mean? I would love that, because then the team that I cover every day can go hire Matt LaFleur and actually have a good head coach for once. That would be absolutely fantastic. So I hope that the Packers do that. I hope that it goes that way, but I don't know. I'm not going to hold my breath. But again, I honestly, if you could tell me that the Cowboys were going to get into the playoffs, if I knew that they were going to get in, I would like them better than the Jags, the Chargers, the Niners, the Bucks, like the Lions, the Texans. Like, I would take the Cowboys over all those teams because they're a different team now than they were before. And that offensive talent with the semblance of defense that they put together, that's a winning combination, in my opinion. And this week, they have a massive game against the Lions to keep it going.
And that's another monkey they got to get off their back. The Lions have really had their number. If you want me to take you seriously, go beat the teams that seem to kind of have you figured out. At FanDuel, plus 260 for the Cowboys to make the playoffs. If they do that, then yeah, I think they walk onto the field and they're a threat in any game. But are they a threat in every game? It's very similar to the way I talked about the Panthers, or I would still talk about the Falcons this way, even though they're very eliminated, where they can show up in a December game against somebody important and upset somebody and ruin someone's division standings.
If somebody has a terrible offensive line and the Falcons pass rush can kind of get things going and have a good game, I could see that happening. But with Kirk Cousins at quarterback, my view of the Falcons and their ability to do things like that is tainted. But I know that they have the talent on offense, at least. A good point guard game from Kirk Cousins, they might be able to do that. But
one of those games where it doesn't come down to him, which describes a lot of his wins in Minnesota, at least.
Fair enough. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Brain Luke Braun, as we tell you every episode. Thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.